Hello everybody and welcome to my monthly Vietnam update. While almost everyone will ring in the year of the rabbit in 2023, Vietnam is welcoming the year of the cat. We wish you and your family a peaceful, happy and prosperous new year of the cat. 2023 had a flamboyant start with US and European equity market trading already in positive territory. Also, the VN index gained an impressive 10.3% in January, a record increase in the last 12 months. This gain was mainly due to the strong performance of bank stocks. The AFC Vietnam Fund unfortunately only has a very small exposure to banks, and hence the NAV of the fund increased by only 4.1% according to internal estimates. Hi, my name is Andreas Vogelsanger. I'm the CEO of the AFC Vietnam Fund. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and switch on the bell so you don't miss any uploads. Let's talk if the Vietnamese stock market will rebound in 2023. Despite an impressive GDP growth of over 8% in 2022, the Vietnamese stock market tumbled around 35% in US dollar terms. The main reason for this abysmal performance of the VN index in 2022 were a sweeping crackdown on corruption, the sudden stop in corporate bond issuance, and the sharp increase in deposit rates. We do, however, believe that some of these problems will be solved in 2023, and combined with the fact that current valuations of the Vietnamese stock market is very attractive, with decent earnings growth of around 14% and a healthy GDP growth forecast of around 6% for this year, we are fairly optimistic that the market has strong potential to rebound. When we look, for example, at the corporate bond market, it clearly shows that the shock of November 2022 with exploding bond yields is behind us, and we expect bond yields to ease further to around 12 to 15% over the next couple of months. The Vietnamese government recently issued a new regulation allowing companies to extend the maturity of their corporate bonds to up to 2 years, which was welcomed by the market. And mid-December 2022, Nam Long, a real estate company, issued a 500 billion Vietnamese dong corporate bond at the yield of 12.94%, and this bond was sold to IFC, the International Finance Corporation. Another topic is the US dollar, interest rate and inflation. The US dollar strengthened considerably in 2022, mainly due to the Fed's aggressive interest rate hikes in order to bring inflation back under control. Towards the end of 2022, we started seeing the first signs that inflation slowly came down and that at the same time the US dollar also started to weaken. The market expects that the US now has passed the peak for headline inflation, but the Fed will probably continue to raise rates early in 2023 to bring down inflation further and eventually cut rates in 2024. In uncertain and volatile times as we live in now, it is certainly challenging to provide an accurate longer forecast. And it might very well be that we will experience some unforeseen and hopefully positive surprises, but the future will tell. Also, Vietnam has seen some interest rate hikes from the State Bank of Vietnam, SBV in short, in 2022. But not to bring down inflation under control, but to manage the exchange rate of the Vietnamese dong. The weakening of the US dollar towards the end of 2022 was seen with great relief by the SBV and will certainly ease pressure to manage FX rate and manage also the country's liquidity. We therefore believe that the foreign reserves will rise again and that the Vietnam's deposit rates will likely come down further after the strong increase in 2022. Well, has the Vietnamese stock market reached its bottom? As mentioned, we do think that the Vietnamese stock market has bottomed out in November 2022, and we see strong potential for a rebound in 2023. It is interesting to see that foreigners came back to the Vietnamese stock market right at the bottom and poured in $1.1 billion in the last 2 months of 2022 alone. Despite the strong start of the year, the valuation of the VN index still looks very attractive, trading well below its historical average with a P ratio of around 10.5 times. Also, it is interesting to note that if you look back over the last 15 years, the VN index always had a strong rebound after a negative year. So, what is the outlook for 2023? We believe that the Fed is going to keep interest rates elevated for the foreseeable future, and we think the same applies for Vietnam. We will therefore keep an important allocation in our portfolio to the insurance sector, given that the insurance companies are one of the main beneficiaries in a high interest rate environment. Many of these companies are very cash rich and are generating a lot of interest income in keeping their liquidity invested in fixed term deposits. The valuation of the insurance sector also looks attractive with a P ratio of 9 times, and Q4 2022 earnings results look encouraging. Particularly the insurance companies we are invested in hold a substantial cash balance in relation to the total assets, and they have no debts at all in their balance sheets. The banking sector also benefit in a high interest rate environment, and the market expects this sector to recover strongly in 2023, given its attractive valuation with a price book of around 1 time and the P ratio of around 5.5 times after a rather poor performance for most of 2022. But banks are probably a riskier bet than insurance companies and are facing more challenges given, for example, their exposure to the real estate sector with its recent liquidity and credit crunch they experienced. Nevertheless, they are considered as the engine of the economy, and with an expected GDP growth of around 6% this year, they will continue to play an important role going forward. We also have an exposure in the banking sector, and we are planning to increase it over the coming weeks. We will, however, be very careful choosing the banks we want to invest in. We believe that banks with a high exposure to corporate bonds and real estate will be more volatile and riskier to invest in. But we are less concerned to invest in banks such as, for example, STB, ACB or LPB. LPP stands for Dien Viet Post Bank, and they reported strong profit growth in 2022 of 56%, reaching a record high of 5,690 billion Vietnamese dong. The total assets of the bank also jumped 13% compared to the long Tet holiday in Vietnam from the 20th to the 26th of January just came to an end. And there was extensive traveling around the country by many Vietnamese citizens to famous tourism places such as Vung Tau, Ba Den Mountain or Sapa. The Vietnamese tourist sector continued to recover strongly, but besides domestic tourism, we also expect strong boom in international tourist arrival, especially with China's reopening after 3 years of COVID-19 restrictions in terms of tourism and trade. Chinese tourists accounted for a 35% market share pre-COVID-19, equivalent to 5.8 million visitors, contributing around $5.8 billion to the sector. We also have exposure to the sector and invested in 2 tourism companies in our portfolio. Already in 2022, we saw a very strong recovery in the revenues for both companies, particularly Tam Sen Water Park, DSN, whose net profit increased by 445%, surpassing pre-COVID-19 levels. DSN announced that they will more than double their cash dividend from 1,500 Vietnamese dong to 4,000 Vietnamese dong for the fiscal year 2022. Well, this is all for me. Thank you very much for listening, and you're gonna hear from me again next month. Thank you and goodbye.